The other big impact, you all know it, of COVID, two big impacts, is really on the economy, and it's double faceted. There's the inflation that we are seeing because supply chains are logged up and jammed up around the world. That's a direct correlation there, all coming out of COVID. The world shut down very fast. Supply chains are complicated and they are global, and it's taking a while for those supply chains to reopen again at the same time as people saved a lot of money during COVID, had a lot of money to spend. We were all sitting here at home thinking, my God, I'd like to redecorate my house, or I need a new sofa, or I need a new bed. As one economist put it to me, America went through a kind of a national I need a new sofa moment, and that's putting huge amounts of demand pressure into the economy as well. And so with all of the demand that we have and the problems in the supply chain, it's causing inflation, it's causing backlogs. You know it, you're trying to order things, it's taking weeks for them to arrive, they're costing more than they did. That is a common global feature. Other countries too are also suffering from supply chain issues, they're also suffering from inflation issues, but it was all a backlog of COVID and the experience of COVID and the shock to the system that COVID provided. And it's a big political problem for the administration at the moment here in Washington, with the White House thinking, how do we tackle this? I had a long conversation recently with Larry Summers, who was the former Treasury Secretary, and he was talking about what the options are. He is very concerned about the inflationary pressures. He doesn't think that they will just ease themselves out of the system, which is what the White House is hoping will happen, because it is politically very costly for the White House, all of this inflation that's taking place around the country. But Summers was thinking that the administration needs to take much more aggressive action to try to tackle inflation, and not just wait for these supply chain issues to resolve themselves and therefore for inflation to come down again. His concern is that, of course, as prices start to rise, workers start to ask for more money because things cost more in the shops, and so they need more money, and then that becomes what's called a wage price spiral, and people are asking for more money, earning more money, then goods cost more because small businesses are having to pay their labor more, and so they're having to put up their prices as well, and you get into a real kind of, potentially the worst case scenario, a hyperinflationary mess. It's a problem that is exacerbated here because Americans went on a huge, big spending spree after COVID, but it's not unique to here. We're seeing inflation as well in other countries around the world. In Europe, there's a lot of inflation as well. So it's not a uniquely American problem, but it's certainly putting pressure on the White House. All of my conversations with people in the White House, the one thing that they will say is keeping them up at night is this issue of inflation, because they see the political costs of inflation as well. So that is one side of the COVID legacy that we're all having to deal with. I don't know when the inflationary pressures will ease. It depends on when the supply chain eases up. But nobody I have spoken to has suggested that inflation will disappear from at the levels it is at the moment from the American economy much before spring, summer of next year. And that is the best case scenario. That is what White House officials hope will happen, is in the second or the third quarter of next year, which puts us into next summer, you'll start to see things normalize. It couldn't come sooner enough, of course, for this administration, which faces those critical midterm elections this time next year, next November. And if there is still this level of inflation and people are still feeling the economy so badly in their own pockets, then that's a problem for them. The downside of doing what Larry Summers has said and taking more aggressive action to tackle the economy by raising interest rates, for example, is that there are a lot of people still hurting in the US. Yeah, things are good for many millions of people. They have high levels of savings. They actually feel wealthier. They are wealthier. They have good jobs. They're earning a bit more money, historically actually earning more money than they ever have done, because wages have been rising. But there are pockets of the economy, a lot of pockets of the economy, particularly people of color, who have really suffered from unemployment because of COVID. And if you start raising interest rates, you could choke the economic recovery. That is the fear. And so actually you prolong the agony of all of this, and you prolong the agony of COVID, and you push America back into a recession. It's super complicated. It's a very difficult balancing act. You can hear people, even in the Democratic Party, argue both sides of this equation. And it's a conversation that is taking place around the world as other countries also try to deal with these issues.